Hi everyone, and welcome to the next installment of the Endgame series. This time we're going to look at rook activity, which is important because rook endgames are the most common. Despite this, they are far from trivial and can vary strategically in many ways. However, there is one principle that applies to almost all rook endgames, and that is the strength in possessing active rooks as opposed to passive ones. The following is a great example from Hungarian Grandmaster Peter Leko, in a game he played against English Grandmaster Michael Adams in 2005. I'm just going to skip forward about 25 moves or so to the position I want to talk about. Leko had white open with e4, after which came Petrov's defense, and one of the many book lines in that defense. All standard stuff. It's very boring and uninspired defense in my opinion. In Queen h4, this is the last book move of the game, which so far has all just been standard stuff, as I was saying. And white has a nice edge out of the opening, but has created some weak squares in the process. Play continued knight f3, queen h5, rook b1, and bishop f6, which is a questionable choice from Adams, although he can win a pawn back after rook takes b7 with knight takes d4. So next came knight takes d4, queen takes d1, rook takes d1, and bishop takes d4. And it seems now that black is doing okay, because there are problems for white here if he plays rook takes c7 in view of rook f d8 with good counterplay. Let's have a look. If rook takes c7, rook f d8 with a troublesome pin down the d file. For example, if now bishop e3 to try and solve the pin, now comes bishop takes c5, where the bishop is immune thanks to the mate threat on d1. Best play goes rook takes d8 check, rook takes d8, and again the bishop is immune thanks to the back rank threat, and this position would probably be a draw. However, white can do much better than this by going into a 4-rook endgame, in which the greater activity of his rooks will ensure him a significant advantage. So Leko played instead, after bishop takes d4, bishop e3, which is a very nice move, because after bishop takes e3 it's the best that black has. It at least gives white an isolated pawn to worry about after f takes e3. And now c6, preserving the c pawn for the moment, but now rook d6, and the difference in rook activity is clear as day. Black's rooks are completely passive, and if they remain so, it won't be enough to hold out for a draw. And black is losing at least a pawn here already. So Adams tried to create some activity himself with the rook a e8, but Leko has got there first with the rook activity, and it proves to be decisive. After king f2, preserving the e pawn. Now rook e5 and rook takes c6, defending the now passed c pawn from the rook at e5. So rook f e8, doubling on the e file, which is no bad thing, but it's not as strong as doubling on the 7th rank, which Leko is now able to achieve with rook c7. So rook takes e3 and rook takes f7, and black's a pawn down, but that's the least of his worries. He gets a couple of checks in now, but they come to nothing. After rook e2 check, king g3, rook 8 e3 check, and now rook f3, and Leko is more than willing to simplify, because the rook ending a pawn up is a matter of technique. After rook takes f3 check, king takes f3, rook c2, and rook c7, depending the c pawn. And here Adams played h5, and he could play instead rook c3 check, but after king e4, rook takes a3, despite material equality being restored, once more white's more active rook secures him an advantage after the simple move c6, from where it's a 1 position. Not only white's rook, but also his king are much more active than black's, and he would have a significant advantage, probably a winning advantage, going into this endgame situation. So h5, now c6, king h7, h3, king h6, king e4, king g6, and at this point Adams resigned, finally accepting that there was no way he could hold his position together. So it was a fine example of active rooks winning an endgame for Leko. Okay, on to our next example. This position was reached by GM Lars Bo Hansen in a game against another Grandmaster, Lev Basakis, at the Istanbul Olympiad in the year 2000. Lars Bo Hansen, by the way, is the author of the excellent book from which I'm taking these examples. It's called Secrets of Chess Endgame Strategy, and this series, when it's finished, will have covered only the introductory chapter, so it's definitely one to get if you're interested in improving your endgame further. In this position it's black to move, and he has a critical decision to make. If white is given enough time to play c3 and maneuver his knight to d4, he will have a safe and lasting advantage for the rest of the endgame, and black will face an uphill struggle. Hansen describes how he had to think for a long time here and decided on a forcing line that allows white to win a pawn but results in a position where black has good compensation in the form of an active rook, which he judged as sufficient to draw. So he continued d4, attacking the rook, so rook e2, which is the most logical move, and now bishop d5, which is necessary in order to prevent knight f3, although white can now win the f pawn, which Basakis did with rook e5. And after rook h d8, defending the bishop, rook takes f5 check, king g8, and rook f4, attacking the d pawn. And if white wants to avoid the endgame with the active black rook that Hansen had in mind, then he must look for alternatives, but the point is that black was threatening rook a c8 and a later bishop to g6 with counterplay on the c pawn. So rook a c8, letting the d pawn drop because it's okay, because black has bishop takes g2, which is a nice tactical shot to win back a pawn, because after rook takes d8, rook takes d8, king takes g2, comes rook takes d2, attacking the c pawn. So rook c1 is best, and now comes king f7, and this is the position that Hansen had envisaged some 8 moves earlier when he sacrificed the pawn. The active black rook and the fact that white now has 2 isolated pawns on the king side give black very realistic drawing chances. Play continued, king f3, king f6, a4, and rook d5, because on this 4th rank the rook can achieve the maximum activity in this position, as all of the white pawns can be attacked at will from this rank, and also the white king has no good place to hide. So rook e1, rook f5 check, king g2, rook g5 check, king h1, rook c5, attacking the c pawn, rook e2, and now rook c4, attacking the a pawn, forcing b3 if white wants to hold on to the pawn that he's up, and now rook c3. And with this move the draw is secured for black, as it's impossible for white to dislodge the black rook from its very active position. Play continued, king g2, g5, rook d2, king e6, preventing rook d7, now h3, h5, king h2, h4. Hansen's happy to lock up the position as much as he can because he's just playing for a draw. King g2, b6, king h2, a5, king g2, king e5, king h2, and at this point the grandmasters agree to a draw, as it's completely clear that it's impossible for white to make progress. So it was a great example from Lars Bo Hansen on how decisive rook activity can be, even if it's solely to secure a draw. So that's it for this segment. In conclusion, when you find yourself in a rook endgame, always strive to activate the rooks. I hope you found this instructive. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.